What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. What is going on, everybody? John Middlekauff, 3 and Out podcast. We have a special guest today. This guy's been really cool to me. Fan of the show. I'm a big fan of his. Bobby Bones, synonymous with country music, hosts of one of the biggest radio shows in America every morning, simulcast all over the country. Also won Dancing with the Stars. He's does stuff with American Idol. I mean, this guy's just a versatile media guy, but I wanted to have him on, talk about Nashville, talk about the business, talk about how he started from nothing and became what he became. And Bobby's the man. So really, really enjoyed my conversation with him, covering everything from, the radio business to country music to just life. So we'll dive into Bobby. And listen, because of Bobby, a couple years ago, I went to Toby Keith. And like many people, I love going to concerts. I enjoy it, especially country concerts. A lot of fun. Have some beers, have a good time, dance and sing. And if you want to go to a concert, luckily enough for you, my partners, my friends, and the official ticketing app of this podcast, Gametime, has you covered. Just download the app, search any event you want to go to. Games, comedy shows, like I said, concerts, search by the venue, search by the price point. Very, very easy to use. Cannot recommend them enough. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app today, create an account, use the code JOHN for $20 off. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN, that's my name, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Okay, very, very excited. A friend of mine, live from Nashville, Tennessee. Many would say he's synonymous with country music, one of the biggest radio stars the last 20 years. But I was watching my guy Bobby Bones interview, I think Chris Stapleton, and you mentioned that you were once in O-Town. Is that a joke or is that actually true?
That's so funny where that has gone. So yeah, I was not in O-Town. It was a prank that I pulled off a long time ago, and it still lives on Wikipedia. O-Town was the boy band that was like, "Oh,
I remember.
Nothing at all." I loved O-Town, but you never knew what the people in O-Town looked like. So I started like this bit where I was the long lost disgraced member of O-Town, and I was just dying to get back in, trying to get the band to acknowledge me. And that thing has lived, and people of prominence, yourself included, I'll put that on the list, of people of prominence who've said, "Hey, were you in O-Town?" Like, that makes my heart feel warm. It makes my heart feel warm. Almost as warm as when I saw your engagement picture. Those two together, that was it. You on a knee and you saying, "Are you in O-Town?"
Yeah, we got to stay hot right now. She's happy, I'm happy, we're all happy. So
How long you have that
big day
planned?
big day in the Middlekauff life, actually.
Yeah,
Bobby.
how long was that planned as to where?
Well, that was a fluid situation. That was tough. We're going back. We're recording this a little before the 4th of July, but we were going back home and going to Tahoe, and I didn't want to lug it around, and have it risk, go through Southwest or just whatever. And so I had to get it done. And then probably a couple weeks ago, I got sick. I was going to try to pull it off then. And then it was kind of, we're leaving here in a couple days. I'm like, my brother was in town flying back from a bachelor party from Cabo, and he stayed with us. We were going to go play golf. I was like, well, I got a camera guy right here. So the Princess Hotel, which is behind where they have the Waste Management golf tournament, really nice, cool little hotel. And I was like, we're going to a restaurant there. I told Jeff, you just got to make this, just have the camera. I kind of was like, hey, let's take a picture. It's kind of awkward. I mean, she kind of knew it was coming. Again, she picked the ring. So she didn't know when, but it worked out pretty well. Then a monsoon was coming in, right? So about, the hockey game had tipped off, and I look in the backyard. I'm like, oh my God, and the monsoon actually didn't happen, but I kind of got nervous for a while. It all worked out. The lighting was perfect.
Well, I love that for you, dude. I just got married, about to do 3 years. So, I didn't get married till later in life. And, it's weird because we're both people who talk for a living, performers. I don't really get nervous so much anymore, even if it's like live television, but I got nervous even though I knew what the answer was going to be. It was a bizarre feeling where
It really
I
was.
guess I just didn't want to screw up her moment more than anything, more than any sort of, okay, don't screw up on live anything. I just didn't want to screw up her moment. And so I was nervous. Like I was like talking in an accent or something. I don't even talk like in a like an English accent out of nowhere because I don't know I don't know what to do with my hands. Like the whole thing was weird. So congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm 39, so of all the people I
That's
know,
when I got engaged. Yeah.
I'm the last. And she's like, "Did you even say will you marry me?" She blacked out. I was like, "I think I did." I don't know. I don't know. It's done a lot of things in my life. It's a unique experience. I can't quite compare anything to that. Whatever long it is, 30 seconds, 20 seconds, when it all kind of goes down. But it's
Yeah,
cool. So
it feels momentary. Like I think I kind of blacked out. I compared it to I was doing Dancing with the Stars, and I've never danced before. And they were like, "Hey, come do Dancing with the Stars." And the first, 4 episodes, you'll get kicked off because nobody that's never danced wins the show. And so I was going to do promo for American Idol because I was on Idol at the time. And so I
no
go to
big deal.
Dancing with the Stars, and they go, and there's this click track. It counts to 4, and the song starts. So if you're watching on television, which I'd never watched the show, but you're watching on television, you don't hear the click track. The first dance I did, I don't remember. It felt like I was proposing because I freaked out, blacked out, finished the dance, completed it, then fell down on stage. All I remember is that click track. All I remember is my wife now walking in to the barn that I was proposing to her in, and then it being over for both of those. Very similar feelings.
Subtle drop of Dancing with the Stars, but you won the thing, correct?
Yeah, I'm a wildly good athlete. Actually, I did win, and it's not because of my athletic ability. It was just because, if you have a strong podcast or a big radio show, or like we depend on our people, and hopefully our people depend on us to be honest, authentic, as truthful, not always right, but truthful as possible. And there's a bond that's formed. Like really, it's not passive listening. And so, yeah, my listeners, at the end of that show, and this wasn't about that, but the end of that show, the vice president of like non-scripted called me in at ABC because I was still working on a different show there. So I still had a relationship, and I was going back up to Disney ABC a lot. And he was like, "Hey man, you could have taken a dump on the floor. You'd have won that final episode. Your fan vote, your vote was so big." So that's all it was. I worked really hard on that show. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But for me to say that it was my dancing, I would be lying.
One thing's crazy, and you've been in this business a lot longer than me, is the power you have in the audio medium. I get people that, if I see them at a golf course or whatever, and they come up to me and they're a listener, and their reaction and the way they interact with me is like I've known them for a long time. And at first it's a little jarring and you kind of get used to it, and then you realize how cool it is. But the relationship you have of talking with people that you don't see, unlike TV or whatever, they don't see you. And now with these earphones, and really the last 20 years of plugging earphones, you're right in their ear. It's a very, very special, like I'm going to use the word again, unique relationship you have with people that you just don't get in any other medium of quote unquote entertainment. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I think again, it's if someone's searching out your show, like when I listen to Three and Out or Go Low or whatever it is, if I'm gonna go search for it, I'm not passively listening. Meaning, I have chosen you. I am putting AirPods in to listen to you, and unless I'm just not entertained or you piss me off, I'm here. I've chosen you, so you're my friend, and we're gonna roll together, and I'm gonna know stuff about you. And I think for me, it took me being super fans of other shows, podcasts, to actually revalue how important and how intimate that is. Because again, like before we went on, we had just a couple minutes to talk, and you were talking about you were sick, and I wanted to be like, well, I already knew that. I heard you talk about that, how you wanted to do a show, but you were sick. So you get like, I know all these things that you probably aren't spraying out to individuals. You're spraying it out to like a mass group. So it's weird when one person reflects back on something you said that they remember. But it's an extremely powerful medium, podcasting is. And, I'm wrong a lot. I say a lot of stuff that pisses people off, but I stopped lying on the air, even for embellishments of bits, probably like 7 or 8 years ago, because I can't remember lies. That's really what it is. Because I think I would still be going hard at like just trying to entertain. But I think because I always try to be honest, even if it's, not the best look to me, people like that. Like when I wrote my my first book, I was really nervous about sharing some of the details of my life that I thought people would judge me for. And it ended up being the things that they actually valued the most and respected. But this is the number one place, man. I have, again, I could say you or like Big Cat on PTI or Colin or like people that if I walked up to them in an airport, for the most part, they wouldn't know who I was. But I feel like I know them really well. And I think that's the beauty of this.
I'm fascinated by people who at a very young age know what they want to do. Like I love sports, but at 10 years old, 15 years old, I didn't know I'd be sitting here doing this. And, I've never talked to you about this, but reading a little bit about you, is it fair to say like you knew, and the radio business has changed a lot, but you're a little older than me, the power of radio when I was a kid, whether it was KNBR, the sports station in Northern California. I'm sure you've done stuff over the years with KNCI in Sacramento. It was just it's all you had, right? I mean, every single car you listen to the radio. How did that happen? And I believe, and I truly believe this to my core, regardless of talent, everyone has more talent than others, depending on the industry. It's borderline impossible to fail when at a super young age, you're like, this is what I'm going to do. And in some form or fashion, you're going to end up around that. I think it's inevitable.
Yeah, I think and I was very lucky. I was 5 years old and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. There were three things I wanted to do. I wanted to be on the radio. I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and I wanted to be on television. And so I remember thinking it was weird people didn't know what they wanted to do. Now, I'm also from rural Arkansas, 700 people in my hometown, less than that now, but at the time, 700 people. Nobody did those jobs. You graduated high school and you went to work at the mill. That's it. You went to Weyerhaeuser and you worked at the mill. And people really didn't even leave Hot Springs, much less Mountain Pine, where I'm from. So town was Hot Springs. That's where the Walmart was. And so if you were going into Hot Springs, you told your neighbors, hey, I'm going to town. Do you need anything? So it wasn't like there were a lot of creative or arts jobs around. So I just remember thinking, like kindergarten, first grade, I remember thinking, how do people not know what they want to do? Because I knew immediately. Now, I think part of it was like the therapy part of things was like I grew up without a dad, and my mom was a drug addict, and she died a little later on. But I remember thinking, man, if I'm funny, like people will like me / love me. And it was probably a little bit from that, like me just trying to find love in a place. But I think that you're exactly right. Like I knew what I wanted to do. And it used to be to me, I used to be resentful of how I grew up and, woe is me, food stamp kid, whatever. I'm so grateful for that now as I'm older and can look back. I had nothing to lose. And the power of having nothing to lose is awesome, because what's the worst that's going to happen? It's the same. Like that to me is really one of the greatest things to ever happen to me, was that I didn't come from much. And that allowed me to actually try, because I wasn't worried about being comfortable. And I'm pretty grateful for that now as I've become older.
I get a lot of people asking, like, how do I get involved in the NFL? How do I get involved in football? And people are torn, and it's hard to break in. And they go, well, I have this offer from a bank, and I said, listen, I'll never tell you what to do. I'm not in your shoes, but I know this: once you go a different route,
Yep.
life changes. You get married. You might start making more money, because most of these type jobs, I would say radio back in the day, starting in football, whatever, you're not going to make much. And
especially, arts jobs. You're exactly right. I mean, arts.
Yeah. So once you do a real job, start selling, you might be making six figures by your mid-20s, and then meet a girl, and it's hard to pivot. You just almost got to put all your chips in the middle of the table. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But not having a second option, and that was for me, because I was like, I don't really like anything else, and I don't trust like my attention span / just I'm not the smartest guy. I have to do this. And then it just kind of plays out. You, like you said, the way you grew up, getting in radio, even by the time, like, how do you even start? Because not like you got a cousin that owns a station or know this guy. Where the hell do you even go? Like, what's going to be my first step?
I was a teenager. I was 17, and I went and begged at the local radio station to do anything, any side job. And so they hired me to clean the radio station. That was literally the job. I was a kid that was making minimum wage. They hired me to clean the lobby, and then to switch out the Rick D's weekly top 40. And it was a pop station. And so I was like, cool, this is the greatest thing ever. I get to work in a radio station. And I think the key to success in general is just being available, right? I think I can learn anything, but I'm going to be available. And if you ask, I'm going to say yes. And so I was just available. They fired a guy for stealing some stuff, and they threw me on in the overnights on the weekend. And of course, it was awful, but the best ability is availability. And I did it, and I just showed up over and over again. I do not have a good voice. There's nothing really about me. I speak with a terrible speech pattern. As a broadcaster, I'm pretty bad, but I've been able to make a pretty good career, whether it's on whatever medium it is, on understanding where I'm not the strongest, but also knowing where I am strong and like focusing on the main thing. And I think that's been, the kind of the secret to whatever success this is. And also, I wasn't good looking either, so I didn't have any girls till I had some success. So it wasn't like I was trying to get a job and, make money and have girls. I didn't have to worry about getting anybody pregnant. I didn't have sex in my 20s. So it was like that kind of life. I'm very grateful for that now, but at the time, not my favorite.
So did you I equate you with country music. Was that not something did you get involved with country music early on in your career with country music radio?
I grew up in Arkansas, so country music was a big part of my life, but no, I mean, I started at a pop station. I did that and moved up. I was only in Arkansas for, all through college. Nobody in my family graduated high school or college, so it was important for me to do that. So I worked in Hot Springs, Arkansas for 4 years and went to Little Rock, Arkansas, and I was doing pop. And then I moved to Austin, Texas, and I was doing pop and hip hop. I was doing a national sports show on Fox Sports Radio on the weekends, and I would fill in for like Jim Rome and stuff. And that was fun for me because I've always been a sports nerd. And so I felt like, okay, I've kind of got it. But I started investing what little money I had, and I was making like 50 grand a year. This is probably like 2005, which to me, I was rich. But I found a technology that now is used, and it's kind of old now, but it was called Comrex. And we were using it for remotes for like stations to do, hey, come out, $20 off a free spray tan type stuff. And I was like, man, why couldn't I use this and extend it to another station? So I bought 2 of them and convinced the station to put me on in the morning. And I would do it for free, all for free. Phone lines, producer, I paid for everything. And it took us like 9 months, and we won there. And as you know, this is universal. If you have a W under your belt and you can make sure that the people that hire you aren't at fault if you lose, because all they're doing is looking at the data and hiring you. If you can have them cover their butts, they will hire you. And I got a chance to succeed, and I did. And then I used my own money and had like 30 stations, started to make some good money then, and then sold part of my syndication company to iHeart. Was doing pop and hip hop and some rock stuff, but I just wanted it to be back in like normal America. And we don't play a lot of music. I'm massively in the country fabric now, and I love it. But we don't play a lot of music on like the broadcast show. But we have a lot of country artists that stop in. But we also have, John Mayer, Pharrell. If they're in town, they'll come by too.
Post
Malone. Yeah, Post Malone played with me at the Ryman, which was super cool. So yes, I'm just generally a music nerd, a sports nerd and a music nerd. So I think that's why this fits. And I'm also kind of a hillbilly still, as you can hear by how I talk. So it just makes sense.
I saw you on Instagram. Someone asked you, because you had the event within the last couple of months and Post was there and you hung out with him and he played. I got 2 questions. One, you were just asked, like, can he sing? And 2, I have a theory, but why do you think he's kind of making this transition, what feels like he's just going to go all country, at least for the time being?
I think it is only for the time being. I think he says that pretty openly too. Like, Nashville doesn't like if people are unsuccessful at their current home and think they can come over to country and have that as a safety net or have that as a last resort. This format doesn't like that. What this format does like is for someone who is successful in another part to go, I love and respect country music, and I'm going to do a country project, but I'm also not saying that I'm a full-time country artist. And he also moved to Nashville, made himself available for the community, the songwriters. This town has embraced him like crazy. So I do a show where I play at the Ryman every year. We've been able to raise a bunch of money for St. Jude, and I just reached out to him, didn't know him, and said, hey, is there any chance that you'll come and play at the Ryman? You could play with me at the end of the show. And he was like, yeah, sure. But even that day, because, he's big Hollywood, big superstar. I was like, man, what if he doesn't show? He showed up half an hour early. He got in, was nervous, not to just perform, but he was doing a couple like old school country songs and also doing one of his songs. But he was so nervous to not mess it up that I walked back during a break and was just introducing myself. And he was singing. He was sitting on the toilet, lid down, pants on. But he was sitting on the toilet because the acoustics, just practicing And that's when I heard him sing, and I was like, oh, Post Malone can really sing. And on top of that, I knew he was serious about this. But he also grew up in Texas, and he's been doing stuff in country, like dabbling for the past 7-8 years, playing with Brad Paisley, putting country covers up, but also at the same time not saying, I'm now a country artist. And I think in general, Nashville respects that.
I think we're kind of in an age of authenticity, in the sense of music, in what we do. Uh, And I think it's kind of shown with Post. It just feels like he really wants to do it. And it feels like he likes it. And it just kind of resonates. And I was watching an interview you had with Chris Stapleton. It's safe to say he doesn't really look like most country stars in my life.
Pretty safe.
I saw Luke Combs came to Arizona a couple weeks ago. He definitely does not. Zach Bryan, I don't even know what umbrella you'd put him under. I saw him in Vegas during the Super Bowl. He is a remarkable performer. And there's just a realness to all these guys that don't look the part. I saw Brooks and Dunn and Alan Jackson and all these guys when I was a kid in Northern California, and they were country stars and they looked the part, right? And these guys just resonate. And I also think that, when we were growing up, you listen to certain genres. Like I like rap, I like country. Now it's so much carryover. It's like, yeah, just like the Zach Bryan guy.
Mm-hmm.
You won't meet many people that like, yeah, Chris Stapleton sucks. Like, who says that? No matter what you listen to. Do you feel that when you had on Jelly Roll recently, and I saw you ask him, you're like, you don't really look like most people in this town, right? But he just resonates for whatever reason. I think it's pretty obvious he's talented, but it's just something about him,
Yeah, I think if somebody now is super polished and even naturally good looking, we look at that twice and go, is this even real? Like almost unfair to the pretty people now, because it has shifted, and life now as an artist is like a 24-hour reality show where
For sure.
you're exposed in every way. And a lot of people keep some stuff private, but in the 90s, early 2000s, I mean, you could go even back further than that. You only exposed what you wanted because there was no other way to see it. Now, if you aren't showing parts of your personality, if you're not recording pre-concert footage, then people are like, what's going on? Why are you not doing this? Like, it's expected of you to do it now. There are very few that can get away with not doing it. But I think because of that, authenticity has just become the dominator. So much so that even if you're authentic, but you're super pretty, we don't believe it for a while. So yeah, I think that's it. You still got to be good. You have to be better now than you had to be 10 years ago. And now everybody knows that the tricks of the studio, and sure, you can auto-tune anybody, you can put effects on anyone, but eventually if you can't sing, you're going to get caught not singing or not singing well, because everybody records every concert. You have to play live, either for like executives or at a private event, because that's where people make a lot of money, concert, and you're going to get caught not being good. So to be good, you really have to be great. And you just have to put a presentation of you're being real. And sometimes maybe not as real as others, but it just has to be that presentation.
You don't believe it's possible to fake it in this moment, because sometimes I'll hear a guy that like, I really like that song. Well, the first thing I do is go to YouTube. I type in the song and I type in acoustic. I'm like, oh, doesn't quite sound the same. And so it can happen in the short term, but can it happen over the long term? Probably
yeah,
not.
And it's hard for a megastar to happen that isn't really great, especially in the format that I'm in now, because I don't know anybody that hasn't come to my studio and played for me, and not because they're like, oh, we want to go play for Bobby, but my radio show is big and our podcast is by far the largest in this format. So people want to come by and play just for the exposure, and you can't be bad. I mean, if there are people that come in to perform and they suck, you usually know by my response, and I'm not mean in any way, because sometimes it's just the morning. But I'll say something like, wow, it must have been pretty tough to wake up early this morning. Or like, I know it's hard to sing in the morning, but this format especially, everybody performs because you have to be good to make it. And all those people you mentioned are perfect examples of that.
Has there been someone recently, obviously not going to throw anyone under the bus, but on a positive note that came in that you're like, damn, this guy might be better than I thought?
And it's a land of giants here. I'm telling you. And this is, I'll give you a really, the answer, it's true, but like Luke Combs. I don't expect Luke Combs, because he's such a great songwriter and his songs are good. I don't expect him to be a great vocalist because, it's Luke Combs. He's a common man. That dude can freaking sing like he's in a choir. Like he is hitting notes that I think people don't give him credit for because of what he sings about, which is very common man type things. And he has a very powerful voice. But at the same time, I'm listening to him sing 3 feet from me, and he could sing any format he wants. The same thing with Garth Brooks. Like, there's a reason they're stars, but we don't think of them as like these elite singers, mostly because of what they're singing or performing about. But they could sing anywhere they wanted to be in any format and sing any kind of song, and they would have been massive stars. We just don't think of them as pure vocalists because of kind of the content of their music.
You bring up Garth. I'll never forget when he played Central Park. I think it was on like ABC or NBC or whatever in the late 90s. Is it safe to say that he changed country music forever in terms of all the money these guys have made? And then Tim and Kenny and Jason Aldean, everyone else comes after him and just they get NBA money now because of the popularity of the music, where probably before I was born, I would say, is it fair to say in the 70s and even through the mid 80s, country music was nowhere nearly as popular on the national level as the way that he took it. Like, I mean, an all-time rocket ship. He's the highest selling artist of the 90s, right?
He is the highest selling American artist of all time, like not even country. He's the guy. He's got like 10 diamonds, which is except for the Beatles, and maybe he tied the Beatles. And he's by far the biggest American artist, which is crazy to think whenever you think of Madonna, Michael Jackson, like all of the legends. Garth, statistically, is the number one American artist. Yeah, for sure. And what Garth did that was different and had a lot of pushback on is Garth did basically with all of his country songs I guess what you call like a pop style concert. I mean, he was flying across, he had explosions, he was changing clothes, and at the time he was getting a lot of crap for that. And I've been lucky enough I would call Garth a buddy at this point. And I've had talks with Garth where people told Garth he wasn't country because of his presentation, not his music, but how he presented everything else, like his stage shows. He would, he did SNL, he did the Chris Gaines thing. The thing about Garth was he tried new things. He was one of the few that was like, if this doesn't work, that's okay, but I'm going to go and just continue to push and like challenge myself, very much like an athlete will do sometimes.
Yeah.
But Garth was an athlete. And there's this thing in country music as well, where there are a lot of country stars that are athletes, and that's kind of where this comes together. But like Sam Hunt played Division I quarterback. There's like 8 or 9 guys that played Division I sports, a lot of Division II guys. But their work ethic through sports is actually what makes them such a great country star, because they put the same effort into the training, into the, watching tape, listening back to concerts that they did when they were in athletics. And a lot of people ask, like, how are there so many guys that were so good at sports doing country music? It's just because that translates. It translates from being an athlete to being in music. And Garth had that. He ran track at Oklahoma State. And Garth is a guy, and I get a lot of people that are just like, hey, what's Garth like? And I'm not kidding. I thought the first couple times I met him, he was just really good at being nice. I thought he was just like, okay, but there's something, it doesn't matter. If he wanted to be president, he has that ability to eliminate everybody else in the room. When just talking to you, he knows everybody's name. And people will say, well, he has somebody tell him that before he goes into a room. To which I say, yes, but you're the person in charge of hiring good people as well, right? Like, he shouldn't be penalized because he hired somebody, if so, to tell him everybody's name in the room and then for him to remember everybody's name. But when Garth comes to you, you leave going, I think that guy liked me. Everybody does it. Everybody thinks Garth loves them. And it's really cool to look and see how historically dominant he's been in all American music, and then see that guy and like he just drives a truck down the road.
My cousin, he was playing in Fresno years ago and is in the beer business and was dropping off some kegs at the arena. And it must have been, early in the morning, and maybe he was doing sound and they just ran into each other. Obviously, my cousin stops, sees him, and they just talked for like probably 10 minutes. He said he couldn't have been any more normal. They started BSing about like Fresno State football. And yeah, I mean, I think that's something that it does feel that country music has. A lot of their guys, especially this crew of more recent guys, pretty down to earth. I have my brother's college roommate is the right-hand man for the super rich farmer in the Central Valley in California. And he had like a 25th anniversary party. And he knows Party because Party married a girl from Fresno, and he paid party, and Joan Jett was the headliner to play his own party. There's a couple thousand people there. Then there was an after party, and John Party played that. But for like an hour, they were just beers in his office. And then it just ends with me, my brother, and Party BSing for like 15 minutes. And he gave the story about this businessman in Dixon or Winters, where he's from, this small town in Northern California, basically told him, if you ever want to make it in music, you have to go to Nashville. And John's like, I don't have any money to go. And he's like, I'll take care of you to get going. And I didn't quite realize it till I went a couple years ago with Maria to Broadway, and it's a very, very unique place. Is this, Nashville's like, if you want to play in the NFL, you got to play college football, right? Certain industries, like if you want to work in venture capitalists, you probably need an MBA from a big time school. Like there are certain requirements. It's pretty hard to make in country music without going to Nashville. Like Hollywood's not even really like that anymore. You don't need to move to LA to become a movie star, but it feels like country music, like you got to be in Nashville or it probably ain't happening because they all live there, right? Is that fair to say?
I mean, it's 99.9%. Occasionally there's a person who comes and makes it and moves back out. Like Darius did for a while, went back to South Carolina. Justin Moore moved back to Arkansas. Zach Bryan went back to Atlanta, but now back. I mean, Zach is probably one of the guys who never came to Nashville. Like that's the one that I can think of, Zach Bryan, but he wasn't trying to make it as a country star. He just makes music that's country-ish, Americana-ish, rock-ish. But yes, the answer is absolute yes. When I was on Idol and I would mentor these kids, even on the live shows, they'd be like, I want to be a country star. You have to move to Nashville because the decision makers are there. And it's funny you mentioned John Party. John's one of my best friends. And all that checks. Like I've talked to John about that many times where he was like, I don't know how I'm going to get there. And thankfully somebody stepped forward and said, I'll help you get there. And that's what John did. And John was grinding it out for 10 years, 7, 8, 9, 10 years before he was able to even hit.
Well, he's my age. It's not like he's 28.
Even when you get here, it's hard. You have to get here. And then when you get here, it's just surviving until you get your opportunity. And a lot of people get better when they get here. You're around better talent, you tend to get better as well. But yeah, John's a good example of somebody who was grinding along for a long time and then had a little hit, and it exposed him to a lot of people who then saw how good he was song after song after song. So it's just about getting that first look somehow.
Well, it's like if you go to Alabama or Georgia, even if you don't play there now, you're transferred. You're going to get an opportunity. If you make it to the NFL preseason game, you're going to get a chance to show. I remember being on Broadway for a couple of days, just drinking, having the time of my life. And me and Maria would go, God, that person's incredible. Like, how many people just never make it in that town?
Incredible singers are everywhere. It's intimidating for people to move to town, even the great ones, because they come from, I would compare it to being like a really good ball player in your high school team. All of a sudden, okay, you're going to the minors, and it's like, holy crap, I'm not King Dingaling anymore of my high school or my hometown. I had to move up. And that's what this is here, except it's not the minors, it's the friggin' major leagues. So even the best will admit they move here and get intimidated quickly because there's greatness everywhere you look. But it's not just about singing, and it's not just about songwriting. It's about whatever that thing is that is undefinable that a great artist has that makes you want to pay a little more attention to them. And sometimes it takes, years to develop, and sometimes people just don't see it. Like the right person hasn't seen it yet. So there is no formula, obviously. But the one thing that most people I know that have made it in this town, the one thing they have in common is they just didn't quit.
Do you think a lot of people in the town don't make it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's 95% don't make it. I mean, I would think even the best.
Is that unlucky, or like you said, maybe they don't try as hard, or maybe they just don't get seen, or it's just all different variables?
Work is interesting just in general because people can work hard. Like my stepdad worked hard. He worked at a mill his whole life, and he would come home. He was like dead tired. He worked really hard, but there's also a lot of strategy involved to this. So you can work really hard, but if you're not putting a lot of your effort into strategy, that's work that you probably need to be doing instead of some of that just straight grinding. So it's a bit of the stars need to be aligned. It's a bit of, can you just survive? Can you make relationships? It's still a relationship business. All business is relationship based. Even if you know nobody, you can move to town, get with the crew, like your class, everybody who comes in around the same time, they're considered like a class. Like my class is like Dan and Shay. We came to town around the same time. I knew those guys before they even were together as a duo. But you start to make friends who come up together. One of them makes it. All of a sudden, they want to pull the people in that they love. And it's just, how do you get that opportunity? And once you get it, you really have to make the most of it.
Forget what the calendar says. Football season is right around the corner. And that means Best Ball Week at DraftKings isn't far behind. Here's what you need to know. DraftKings Best Ball Millionaire Contest is their biggest fantasy contest ever. We're talking 15 million guaranteed prize pool with that's right, 2 millionaires being crowned for the first and second place. If you're a set it and forget it type, I know I am, then Best Ball is for you. No waiver wires, no roster management, bigger rosters, so injuries will not ruin your season. Only the draft, and that's it. You're set for the year. Some of you might have heard I won $18,000 a couple weeks ago at the U.S. Open. It's an incredible high. But $15 million in prize pool, how do you beat that? Multiple millionaires crowned with winning this. I can't even imagine the high being in the mix. And like they said, no roster management, injuries won't impact you because you got bigger rosters. Still not convinced? Check this out. This year, DraftKings is offering everyone a draft one, get one special. Your $20 entry fee scores you a bonus ticket. Get ready for Best Ball Week at DraftKings. Download the DraftKings app and use the code JOHN, that's code JOHN, for all customers who enter the NFL Best Ball 15 Millionaire Contest to get a bonus ticket. Only during Best Ball Week, only on DraftKings. Can you spot, obviously now you just mainly interviewed the main stars, but over your career, you got a lot of people, and you probably meet people at events that are not household names or have not made it big and probably have no money. I mean, are holding on for dear life. Do you think that's an easy thing to spot, or is it not?
The great thing about social media now is a lot of artists already know who they are, have already put it out there, so a label or management company aren't going to try to change it. I think that before social media, that was the thing, that labels would go look for people that were good and then try to shift them into what they felt the void was in the market. Now that doesn't happen. So there are a lot of people who naturally are themselves already. So you can tell maybe who's not going to be commercially the biggest. And I think in an art, just to be able to have a living and do what you love, that's success. Like, to me, if you're in an art and you can pay your bills and you can eat and your kids can go to school and feel safe, that's success. And I think the people that are really good and know who they are, you can tell when people are going to last. I won't say thrive, but you can tell when people are going to last. And I think that to me is success. So yes, I think now you can see who's going to be around in 5-7 years. And not who's not, but who probably is really good but needs to somewhat own who they are. I think that's still part of the problem as well.
It's safe to say the old adage, like in the business, was like, we need a couple songs to put on the radio, which you'd argue, I know a lot of people, the grunge scene always pushed back against that. But in the 90s or even the 2000s, how am I ever going to hear you? Right? There's not YouTube, not internet. To be on the radio is the most powerful medium. Is that kind of a thing of the past now with the way that the consumer listens to stuff?
I think it's one of the main avenues now instead of the absolute main avenue. There's still billions of dollars that goes into trying to get artists on the radio, because I think it's like 75% of people at some point listen to some sort of live radio during a week. And it's not, and I don't listen to a lot of live radio. I like things on demand. To me, radio is whatever's on your phone. If it's on the phone, and you can download it, stream it, to me, that's what it is. But still, I'm surprised at times at how many people listen to live radio. And again, we don't even play a lot of music on our show. However, I see the money that goes from record labels to do two things. One, to get on streaming playlists, and to be on the radio. Because if you have a top 10 song, there's an absolute relationship with a song that's top 10 and a song that is massively streaming. Like, it's not a coincidence over and over again. Will that still continue to change? And I don't even think we're going to have streaming music in 3 to 5 years. Like, we saw downloads, we saw streams. Music, the one thing about it is it's never just been one thing and it's never stayed the same. So the answer right now, yes, radio is still a major part of it, but I don't know what the answer is going to be in 3 to 5 years.
Well, that's the crazy thing. This business has changed so much dramatically. How's a guy who's cut his teeth in radio? I would say you've pivoted as good as anybody. How do you constantly, are you just an open-minded guy? Because some of these radio guys, I'm sure you've been around them, like did not handle this well. You're like, oh, I'll move.
Yeah,
I work with Colin. Colin's an old school radio guy. He owns a podcast company now. Like he'll just transition, no fear. And I would say that's pretty rare for people who have been in a business for multiple decades.
I got lucky that I got started really young, and I was always the youngest to do it, meaning most of my career I was like the young guy. I'm 44 now, so I'm just like the normal dude at this point. But I think growing up the youngest in the industry, I was very digital from the very start. I got fortunate that my timing, like outliers, Malcolm Gladwell writes about, like what Bill Gates, who lived near a computer, and he was fortunate. He lived near a computer, therefore he was able to be interested in the computer because there were only like a few of these computers all over the country. I got lucky that I was born when I was born and that I was in my real developmental years when Napster existed. So we were podcasting the show before podcasting was really a thing. Like I was making a big point about it. So I don't know if it was like a transition for me as much as it was. I've kind of been doing it and waiting on that to be a big part of my my revenue, the money that I make. But I just like to make content. If it's we travel around the country doing sports shows. I've got a sports podcast. We've got, obviously the radio show. More people listen on the podcast of the radio show than ever before. I just want to create stuff that exists, and when people want to grab it, if it's live or if it's 3 p.m., that they can go get it.
I mean, how do you have so much energy? You have an early morning, you're up at the crack of dawn, and you're doing sports podcasts, you're doing sports memorabilia stuff. The Dancing with the Stars is it just you've been pretty lucky from where you started and it's just like you gotta strike while the iron's hot, or like you said, you love what you do, so it's much easier to do this stuff?
It's both. Like you have to make hay while the sun's up. This is our job. Is who knows, right?
It ain't digging ditches either. So
and also it's like we're doing an art. You may not think it's an art, but we may not be doing this in 2 years. What we do may not be in demand by the people that want to demand it. And so I also know that. So I love doing it. And I think if you do what you love, you work harder at it. If you work harder at it, you're rewarded for it, just generally. And so that's part of it. But also it's like, hey man, I'm saving up the nuts because people ain't gonna always like me. And until like the last few years, I was paying like double on my bills just in case I lost my job. My business manager was like, you got to stop doing that. So I kind of live in that mindset anyway. But no, I'm happy. Things are growing. They won't always be that way, but until they kind of shut me down, I'm just going to keep pushing forward and just grateful that people care.
You mentioned him a couple minutes ago, Zach Bryan. Do you think he exists 15, 20 years ago? Because he would never be as big as he was, as quick as he was in just the way that the world used to operate in the music industry. Is that fair to say?
It's hard because he's really good, right? And usually
he's incredible. I mean, he's one of the most, I don't know if you saw the clip of John Mayer talking about his show. Yeah. He's like, I thought he described it as well. Cause I liked his music. You see him live. I've seen Garth. I've seen basically every big country music artist over the last 25 years. It was just a powerful experience.
I would say that if he wanted to be successful and exist according to the rules 20 years ago, absolutely. But Zach kind of seems like the guy that just does not, he's going to do his own thing and not move to Nashville. And I think, again, there's been a benefit to him to be able to make music on Twitter and YouTube and people to find it then because he never moved to Nashville. And I think he could have absolutely, he's so good, he could have moved to Nashville and been a huge star. I just don't know that he would have moved to Nashville. But then how does his music get spread? Because in the old days, unless you lived in LA, New York, or Nashville, your music really didn't get made and it really didn't spread. So cream always rises. So I'll say I think it still finds a way, but it had definitely been more difficult because his success is based on how good he is consistently and that people can mass consume him in a bunch of places.
You talk about these stories, I'm sure, a lot, but like the pushback against Morgan Wallen, too poppy, he's just doing it for the money or whatever. He's just a fabricated star. Saw Jason Kelsey, I don't think took a specific shot, but said basically, I wish country music was the Johnny Cashes and the Willie Nelsons. Like those days are kind of over. I saw Morgan live. Like he's good. He's not like, he's very talented, And his music is his music. You either like it or you don't. That's, to me, like in football, you win or you lose. Arkansas basketball with Calipari, they're going to make it to the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight, or they're not, right? In music, it's pretty subjective. Like, I understand, like, he's not Alan Jackson here. Like, this isn't Hank Williams Jr. But if you see him, it's a pretty fun experience. And I don't know. I just think music, so many people, like you see on YouTube, you post something like, I wish music didn't sound like this, or I miss the old days. It's like, yeah, it's 2024. I enjoy them, but you live in that world. It does feel like there's just a lot of hate. Is it just because of the popularity? Is the money he's making? What do you think it is?
I think it's the popularity for sure. The higher you go on a pedestal, the more people see it. Numbers game, more people complain about it. But this is what I would say, because you can always tell somebody who doesn't know about country music by the comparisons they make. By the way, Morgan is so well respected by the songwriters and artists in this town. Like, there's nobody here in this town that knows Morgan that goes, that ain't real, right? In this town is tough. But in the history of country music, like what country music is, it's the slave ships of Africa and European music. So they brought fiddles from Europe and banjos on the slave ships of Africa. That's country music. So you want to go all the way and root it back. That's what real country music is. Okay, so talking to Garth, when Garth was like, I was told I wasn't country. Johnny Cash, my grandma, and he's from Arkansas, my grandma would tell me about people protesting Johnny Cash because he was not country. He was rock and roll, and people wanted old school country. And they would say the same thing they're saying to Morgan Wallen, that they said to Garth Brooks, that they said to Johnny Cash. Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, they were absolutely destroyed because they amped up a steel guitar. They put an electric amp on a steel guitar, and that was considered so not country that people freaked out. The one thing in common is there are always goobers who go, that's not country. No, that's not true, because every single country artist that has changed country music, all that we've listed, we're told that's not country. But what happens is, what you mean is that's not the country that you grew up listening to. Because if it stayed the same, let's just say it stayed the same from the 90s, it wouldn't exist anymore. So anyone that ever says to me, well, that's not country, I understand they actually have no knowledge on the situation, and they're just talking to hear themselves talk. Or they're just so in love with the music they grew up with, and they have no knowledge of music other than that.
One thing that feels like it's become a lot more mainstream is talking about songwriters. Now, maybe it's because some of these songwriters now sing also and become big stars, like your SEC football. If Alabama wins a big game, Nick Saban gets a lot of credit, and so do the players, right? Like, we kind of see the whole thing where it's like, this guy just has a hit song. You know, most of my life was like, just hit song. Well, it turns out he didn't write it. And when I went and saw Morgan Wallen, his boy Hardy, who I'd listened to him a little bit, and when I saw him, I'm like, this is like Chris Cornell or Kurt Cobain.
Dude, Hardy's awesome.
Redneck.
Yeah.
It was like, whether you like country music or not, you couldn't go see him live and not be like, that guy's a fucking rock star. Yeah. I mean, but he's a writer, you know? So like, that guy does not exist 15 years ago, at least playing. His writing for sure, but he's got to be the most unique guy in the town right now, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, super unique. And not only that, it's in this town,
and just a trailblazer with the way he's doing stuff.
Well, they get a publishing. You know, a lot of artists come in and they're not signed as artists initially. They're signed as writers. So you try to come and get a publishing deal. That's how you make your first checks. So you're like, okay, I just need to prove that I can write just good enough to get a publishing deal. So a lot of times, most times, artists come to town and they write first for a long time. So they become a really good writer because they're around other really good writers. And most writes in this town are multi-people, like 2-3 person writes. So
how's that possible? How do I write a song with another guy?
Well, you come to town, you go to like the little songwriter rounds, you know, where you go play for free and you wait in line, you make a couple friends, and then you're like, well, we should write together. Then you write a couple songs and you go out and you just pitch them to these publishing companies, a small one, a big one, a medium one. And sometimes they'll give you like a $18,000 a year draw to just write songs. And what they'll do is they'll also set you up with other rights. So initially it's, you find your friends and you write with them. And then it becomes, once you start to get paid, it's the company that pays you sets you up on other rights with other writers from your company, other companies. And then once you have success, everybody wants to write with you.
Yeah. So once I write, if I'm paying that $18,000 thing, if I write a song, if I'm Hardy, now he knew Morgan, but let's just use that example. He writes a song for Morgan. It explodes. I don't make any more money than just the baseline money. How do I make money as a songwriter in that scenario? Am I not making much even if I get a hit? It
No,
just explodes me to more people.
you are. No, both happen. So, you get your draw. Let's say I used the number 18,000. So let's say you get your 18,000 bucks and they're paying it like a regular paycheck, like every 2 weeks, because you got to pay the
Yeah.
bills. And so then you got to pay that back. So if you don't pay it back, they'll just end up cutting you. You don't owe them, but you have to pay it back. It's like an advance. And so first you pay it back, and then after that you get a percentage for every dollar that's negotiated. So let's say a huge song blows up. I'm just going to give some fake numbers because it doesn't matter. But let's say you get paid 18,000 bucks a year. You have a number one song. Boom, the song does 1 billion streams, number one on radio. You're going to get a percentage of that money based on like streaming, mechanical. There's a lot of the deal. But you can make easily $1 million depending on your deal.
So it changes your life once you
If you have a hit, it changes your life. Absolutely. But you have to pay back your advance first. Some big writers get a massive draw. Like, they'll go sign with a company and make $1 million a year. And they know that money's guaranteed. Now they're going to write songs and probably they're going to make more than that and get some of that percentage. But first, that $1 million is going to be paid back.
I was talking about with Coward the other day how fast word spreads in the NFL about a guy's personality, a coach or a player. It's safe to say it's like that in Nashville, right?
Yeah, if there's somebody good, if there's somebody unique, everybody knows about it pretty quick because this is a town of greats. But every once in a while, there's somebody who, I won't say transcendent because that's a word, like Morgan Wallen is transcendent for the industry. Luke Combs transcendent right now. We have two at the same time, which is pretty bizarre. Like Aldine, Luke Bryan, Garth, Toby. There are these people that come along and they just kind
Kenny and Tim. I remember when I was in high school.
They just kind of kick you a little different. It's not like they're reinventing the wheel, but there's something about it that's the same, which is comfortable and amazing, but also different, which is awesome. And again, you can't really write exactly what that is, but when it's put in front of you, you know it. So yeah, it's a pretty amazing place, pretty weird place. Sometimes Nashville sucks. Sometimes Nashville's the greatest. I like it, and I'm happy to be here. So I think this has been a really great place for me and my wife, and I don't know, we'll see what happens.
Okay, I get you out of here on a couple sports questions. Saban retires. I think obviously Nick's success speaks for itself, but I think what he did is he made the SEC cool all over America. People in California watch the SEC. People in the Northeast watch the SEC. When I was a kid, like you just kind of watched your region, the Pac-12, maybe like a rivalry game, but like you couldn't miss big SEC games over the last 10 years. Is there going to be a void in that conference, or is now it's so strong? You're adding Texas and Oklahoma, he won't be missed, or you lose a figure like John Wooden or Bear Bryant. Like I'm sorry, there just is kind of a hole into the ethos of. I think it's safe to say the biggest conference in America when it comes to football.
I would say the SEC is too big to fail. It's like one of these corporations that the government wouldn't let fail during whatever recession that we had. You can't let the SEC fail. It makes too much money for everybody. All the schools. And we got lucky too. Kirby Smart came along now, not near as dynamic as Saban was. But Kirby Smart has kind of taken that, hey, I'm now the head guy role. But no, it's too big to fail. They're not going to let it fail. Yes, and Nick Saban, I remember when he went 6-6 his first year and lost to like Louisiana, Monroe.
At home.
Yeah, and I was like, this is not going to be good. Nick Saban's awesome. And if you go to Tuscaloosa and you look at the statues, they have a statue for every time the coach won a national championship in front of the stadium. And it's like every third step, there's another Nick Saban statue. It's really remarkable. I hate going to Tuscaloosa because we always lose. It's a terrible experience for me as a Razorback fan, but it is really one of the more remarkable places to go and see, the Sabans, obviously the Bear Bryants, the Gene Stalling statue. It's a really cool place, but you see all the Sabans, and it reminds you altogether at how freaking great he was. But he also won at LSU, right? You got, and set it up for the next guy too. So yeah, Saban is a boss, will always be the boss, just like Bear Bryant was always the boss. But now the SEC, it's because it's such a corporation, it's too big to fail.
Have you been to every stadium for a game in your life?
I have not been to South Carolina, SEC wise. I've not been to every stadium, but I've not been to South Carolina because they were, SEC East, and we didn't. For a while when I was younger, we played them every year. They were our and then once I could actually afford to go to games, we didn't as much anymore. So I haven't been to South Carolina, but I think other than that, I would say Vandy, but I've like worked out in Vandy, and there's nobody in the stands when I work out. There's nobody in the stands whenever they play. So I feel like that counts.
What's the best environment that you've been to?
I'm going to remove my own. I'm going to remove Arkansas.
Yeah, Arkansas doesn't count.
There are two environments. One, pregame Ole Miss, because the Grove's freaking cool. It's
Yeah.
just it's a sea of tents and people acting richer than they really are, and it's really like cool, safe, easy to find parking, SEC party vibe. And the Ole Miss people, although a little snooty, are pretty nice. Game wise, like LSU, god dang, dude, like the Swamp, or not the Swamp, Swamp second, but Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge at night, it's hard to like, your ears hurt. It gets so loud. The worst, because I leave with a song in my head and I can't shake it for days and days, is Neyland, Tennessee, because they don't stop playing Rocky Top from the freaking minute you walk in to the minute you walk out. So those are probably the more remarkable ones.
I think one of the cooler moments in the SEC in probably the last 5 years is when they beat Alabama on that night game and they carried the the goalpost to the wall, wherever. Is there a river or something in there, and they threw that. That's what you don't get. I mean, you just don't get that out where I'm from in California.
College football, and again, I am biased. I am from the Southeast. I am a Southeast Conference guy. So I would just say college football in general. And again, I'm lucky enough. I'm going in the next couple weeks to work out with the Jets and the Buccaneers and the Panthers. NFL teams like say, come in, do your show, work out with it. It's awesome. I love the NFL. There's nothing like college football when it comes to the passion that these places have, because honestly, a lot of places, this is all we have. In Arkansas, it's all we have. No pro teams. Think about South Carolina Gamecocks. No pro teams. Look at Louisiana. It's not like there's a lot going on in Louisiana. New Orleans is cool, but that's the biggest market in the state. It's like we're so passionate because it's really one of the only things that we have, and it's my favorite part of the year. I love it. I can't wait. I can't wait for it to start, but I know we're going to go like 3 and it's going to be terrible.
Yeah, you guys are going to suck, but you'll have a new coach next year. Maybe give a bunch of money to Lane or something. Get you out of here on a Razorback basketball question. I play golf out here in Arizona with a guy, Jeff Fong, and he went to Arkansas. He grew up in Arkansas too, and he went there in the mid '90s. And we just played last weekend. He's told me before about those Nolan Richardson days and Corliss Williams. He said it was so awesome to be a part of that. And you guys have been good recently, and I know you're buddies with Muss, and Muss is an excellent coach, right? I mean, won in Nevada, was winning with you guys, he'll win at USC. But Calipari, we can debate, the winning in the tournament, but he is, I would say, just one of those old school Saban, not doesn't have the success, but in terms of just his fame and moving the needle, that's a big moment for you guys. You buddies with him already, and how you feeling? Because that was a whoa. Obviously, things got a little weird at the end in Kentucky, but that has to be a positive moment for you guys landing John Calipari, right?
It was a whoa for sure. Even for someone who's pretty connected to the program, it was a big whoa. I love Muss. Like, Muss was awesome and passionate, and like that was my dude.
You guys were winning.
Yes, I hated to see Muss go. And so, but I didn't hate to see him go home. So that's what's cool, right? And that's the only place that I think I wouldn't get irritated that someone goes is home, and he wanted to go back to California. I get it. So, we're trying to figure out who we're going to get. They're like, I think Calipari. But I only knew like hours before everybody did. And usually I know days or week, but it was held so secret. There was like, and I didn't believe it. I was like, there's no chance we're getting Calipari. I'm not buddies with Calipari. I'm afraid to fly too close to the sun. I'm going to be honest with you. I've been invited, like the athletic director, Hunter, has been like, hey, I don't want to not like him. I'll just be honest with you. I don't want to meet him and not like him, because my favorite thing in the world is Arkansas football and basketball and Arkansas athletics. It's my number one. And I don't know that I wouldn't like him, but I don't want to go meet him and he be big time and be like too cool for school. And I'd be like, well, I hate that guy, because my heart won't allow it. So I have not, unless it organically happens, it won't happen. I'm not going to fly too close to the sun. I'm not going to Icarus this thing and melt and hate Arkansas, because that will never happen. I don't know John Calipari. I'm okay never knowing John Calipari. But what I do like about it is I think he had enough of these one and dones without success.
Yeah.
You even see that with this transfer class. Like, he went after some mid and upperclassmen, which he really didn't do in Kentucky. It was all, let's get all the 5-star freshmen. And that resulted in not so great tournament runs in the last few years, which I love to see. Can't stand freaking Kentucky basketball, but can't stand them because I respect them. So I think we're going to be really good. We're going to be really good, and it's going to be awesome.
I don't think most people realize outside of the SEC foothold, Arkansas athletics, I mean, you guys got some big money boosters. I'll end on this. Do you like my future of, Lane, Ole Miss goes 10-2, 11-1. Sam Pittman, probably a rough year. They're going to be looking for a new football coach. Give me who you'd like to see. Get Saban out of retirement?
I would like to see Sam Pittman succeed because I can't.
Obviously, if it doesn't go well.
I guess if Pittman was going to retire next year after winning 11 games, like what would I like to happen? I don't know. I kind of like Rhett Lashley down at SMU. Like I like those guys that. Bobby Petrino's offensive coordinator. Dude, it never got better than Bobby Petrino at Arkansas. It never got. That's the best the program has ever been. That was a really amazing time for me as a fan, having Bobby Petrino be the head coach at Arkansas. I hope Sam does great, and then when he retires, I hope we go and get a young guy. We have a lot of money in Northwest Arkansas. If it's Tyson, if it's Walmart, dude, if it's Jerry freaking Jones. Jerry Jones has a whole football complex named after him. Jerry Jones invited me. So I went with the Cowboys, flew with Jerry in his helicopter, only because I'm from Arkansas. No reason, no media thing. I emailed the website and said, hey, any chance I could talk to Jerry? And they're like, he doesn't do any. I said, well, my name's Bobby, da-da-da-da. And they're like, oh, okay. Jerry's like, come on down. So I show up thinking there's going to be 100 people there. It was just me and my boys and Jerry Jones and his son and Jerry's chopper with the pilot. Flew to the game, sat in a suite. But that's what we do at Arkansas because we only have each other because we have nothing else. So, we rock hard together. I hope to see success. If not, I hope we go after a young guy next.
Did you go to Jerry's house to get on his helicopter? You meet him at the facility?
No, he had his own. We went to Jerry's helicopter. It was when we got on Jerry's helicopter. Yeah. That was like a hangar. It was at a private hangar, is what it was. It was awesome. My friend Eddie.
That's a pretty incredible story. That's an all-timer. How do you ever top that?
It's the greatest. My friend Eddie, who's here with me now, because we're about to record our sports show called 25 Whistles, and Eddie's a massive Cowboys fan. And I'm not. I'm okay. Whatever. I grew up in Arkansas being told I have to love the Cowboys. So I didn't because I was told I had to. But Eddie's a massive fan. And we got on the helicopter and he put on headphones and Jerry was just talking to us. And it was us with the little headphones like Magnum PI flying over Hawaii in that little helicopter. It was awesome.
Hey, Bobby, where does everyone find you? What do you got going on this summer? TV, obviously the radio show every morning all over America. You can find him on YouTube. He's interviewing. I watched Kenny Chesney this morning. Let everyone know what's going on.
I just want people not to look for me. I need a break. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna be honest. I just need a break. So don't
going anywhere this summer for vacation or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when this airs, but we're going to Switzerland. I never traveled until the last few years, and my wife and I have never been. So we're like, let's go do something cool. So we're going to Switzerland. I'm gonna go to Italy. I'm looking to may go buy like a Italian basketball team, so I own a professional pickleball team. That was my entry into sports ownership, and so we're gonna go look at an Italian basketball team and see if we want to get into that business.
Well, Bobby, I can't thank you enough. And I told you a while back when Maria really wanted to see Toby Keith in his last show, and you obviously knew Toby well and you took care of us. And that's, I don't know if I've told you this, but in the bathroom, probably in the middle of the show, I probably had a few too many and had to take a leak. They were grown men. You were like almost in tears because you knew anyone that's been around cancer. I mean, he had to weigh 150 pounds. You knew you were watching a dying man who didn't have much left, giving it all. And that's, of all the things I've ever done in my life, concerts, sports, whatever, that's one of the more powerful things I've just ever seen. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking care of. Mainly Maria loved him, and I've never seen anything like that. And then obviously he passed away a little bit later, but that was. Man, that was. It's hard to even put into words because you knew you were witnessing a guy that just loved to sing and loved to perform, but he didn't have much, and he gave it all he had.
The coolest thing was that, like, you guys were fans and wanted to go, and what's cool is I have access to that, just like you had access to football. If it's something that I'm in and there's somebody that I like, I think there's somebody who likes to bring our people with us, and I'm a big fan. I'm just a big fan. You and I didn't know each other. We just messaged you on Instagram, and I was like, hey, dude, I listen to you all the time. That's literally how I slid into your DMs, and we became friends. The Toby thing was unexpected when it happened, but I don't think it was unexpected to happen. Most of us thought he was beating it, but he was struggling physically. So it was kind of a shock. But, yeah, I'm glad you guys got to go. I had some other friends that went to that show and said they could kind of tell, too, that it probably wasn't long. No one knew it'd be that quick, but I really appreciate you having me on. Again, I listen to if your voice is on it, I'm listening to it. So I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, Bobby. Enjoy Switzerland and keep rocking and rolling, baby.
All right, John. See you, buddy.